USAU released its audited financial documents for 2024. It's actually like nice to see them back doing timely financial reporting. Nonprofits also have to post what's called a Form 990, which you can find publicly on the internet, that shows things like how much money they made, how much they spent, how much they pay their top staff, people who make more than $100,000 a year, and various other things to make sure that because they get this tax exempt status, that they are on the up and up. So USAU posted their most recent financial documentation, and there was some conversation in the Ultiworld Discord around one element of the way that they spend their money. And let's see, I'm going to pull up the actual numbers here. National team programs came in as 20% of total expenses for USAU's year. This is again 2024. And then the youth programs and coaching came in at 14% of total expenses. And Tim Smith, former WAFC head, posted this in the Ultiworld Discord and said this feels like an immediate talking point. So Keith, I'll throw it to you first. What do you make of the fact that USAU is spending more money on their national team programs than on their youth programs and coaching?
I want to continue to use Tim as a resource before we get into this, as a little more context around this, using some of their previous national team data, basically, and previous financial data that they've released from other years. So like he basically said that they're drawing in revenue also from both national team program and competition programs that would include youth. So like the national team program is they're probably spending around 600,000 on it. That about 50% of it is covered by stuff that they're accruing from players participating. And then meanwhile, it's about 72% of the competition athlete programs is covered by the event fees, all those tournament fees that we all pay. And the rest is subsidized by membership revenue. But youth, not specific there. So going back to your question specifically about youth, though, yeah, it is. I can't. My first thought, obviously, is probably the same as most people. Like optical red flag. Like you're like, well, that can't be right, right? Like youth is supposed to be the number one priority. There's no world in which like your youth budget should be tied, like at worst, above whatever the national team. Like that should be your starting point. Oh, whatever we had to spend on national teams, we need to spend slightly more on youth this year. Because it's such a key priority. The community has voiced this time and time again. It's one of the only things I can think of that feels consistent across all of USA Ultimate's feedback and survey data for the time that I've been with Ultiworld. So a decade's worth. Youth Ultimate has basically been, we should be prioritizing this number one. So it's a little bit surprising, but I'm open to taking a step back to thinking more about it. Like national team we're at a time when there's just been a bunch of national team stuff all back to back to back. Maybe this isn't the same way annually. And national team stuff is expensive and it's going to fluctuate based on where it is. When the World Games or a national WIFTIF tournament, when World Ultimate Club Championships or whatever, when all that stuff's in the US, it's going to be a lot more affordable. When it's in China and Australia, it's going to be a lot more expensive. So that's just going to fluctuate. So maybe just an expensive period of time. But also just generally a more expensive endeavor. Like flying people places is expensive. So all the travel costs, it's just an expensive thing to do at its floor. So maybe I don't want to jump the gun, but I'm with everybody else that my first reaction is like, that doesn't look right. It feels like it shouldn't be that way.
Well, let's think about some of the money that has to get spent, right? They have to fly coaches to training weekends, and they have to have staff at these training camps as well as at the events themselves. Australia absolutely adds a massive additional expense. There's multiple teams of coaches. Remember, players are mostly paying their own way. Now, I think that they're getting free jerseys when who knows what exactly the arrangements are there, but USAU is probably paying a discounted rate on those jerseys, but they're paying something for them. Look, I don't think there's like some sort of smoking gun here. I do think, on the other hand, that it is worth asking about the prioritization and how USAU seems to run as the things that it wants to spend the most energy on when you have so much emphasis being put on these national team uh, programs. And, 2025 is going to be even more expensive probably because they have to pay for the athletes for that. That's a fully paid thing by USAU for the athletes. So the athletes, I think they had to pay to go to London Invite, but they don't have to pay to go to China. And that's not cheap, right? To send 14 people plus coaching staff plus support staff to China for over a week. Um, but again, why, like, asking larger scale questions about how USAU allocates its budget and what it's prioritizing is totally legitimate. I tend to think USAU spends too much energy on national team stuff. Like, do we really have to go breakneck to win every single gold medal on the planet Earth? Like, can we do that without spending as much money? On the other hand, USAU's revenues are up over $6 million last year. So it's not like this represents some massive amount of money that, that they can't allocate to other places, right? It's not entirely zero sum if you want to think about it that way. Like, you're going to
Right.
spend money on these national team programs, right? No one's asking for the coaches to have to pay their own way. At least I'm not. So then it comes down to, do we want to see them do more to pump money back into local orgs, which is what I want to see. They say they want to do that. Let's see if they actually do it, right? Let's look at the 2025 data when it comes out and see if we're starting to see some things going in the directions that make sense for growth. Because I don't think these national team programs are doing almost anything to grow the amount of people playing Ultimate Frisbee. Sorry.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that maybe that could be a vestige of the top-down approach that I think marked the kind of Tom Crawford era. But uh, I think that every time we come around to these national teams, especially U20s, but any of the other ones as well, there's always some people voicing the idea that, like, these are, opportunities for the privileged. We can't get enough access. People who are not in hubs already are blocked out, blah, blah, blah. And frankly, is what we want to see more money spent on increasing access to these national teams? Like, is that something that we need to invest more in? Because that, not to say that it's not a valuable thing, but when you're thinking about prioritization, you're asking to spend more membership money to send, the 1% players to support elite competition that doesn't necessarily raise the base or help the growth. So, like, those kinds of questions, I think sometimes people are short-sighted about how we're actually spending the money. I think also you want to know, like, where this youth money is going. What's in this youth bucket? How could we be investing more in this space? If you want to ask about how you want to reallocate, but the top line numbers, it's not going to reflect well. I think when most people see those two numbers, they would want them to be reversed. I think if you just generally asked the average Ultimate person, "Hey, here's how 20% of the USAU budget goes to national teams and 14% goes to youth," is that the preference you would like, or would you like to switch those? Most people, almost everybody would say switch, right?
Yeah, but it's not a totally simple story. Again, I don't think there's anything in this
Agreed.
that, like, suggests that USAU is, like, doing a terrible job or doing the wrong thing. But again, it is about relative prioritization, and I continue to be frustrated. And there's ongoing Ultiworld Discord conversations right now about, like, how they're running YCCs and, like, prioritizing youth stuff and using YCCs as a carrot and stick to get people sort of, like, basically paying USAU affiliate fees. And, you have what I consider to be the gold standard of youth ultimate development right now in the United States. That is Minnesota. It's not Seattle. It's Minnesota, doing an amazing job of growing their high school scene every single year. And they're, like, still, like, in this kind of weird cold war with USAU. And I cannot believe that, right? Like, USAU thinking they're in the right about this is insane. And I cannot be more frustrated by the fact that it seems like we continue to double down on these ideas that like, well, you need to buy into this system that's not working for people, and we need to then like have punishment being doled out to an organization that is doing a great job of doing the thing that we should actually be caring about, which is growing the number of people playing, because everything else will get better. If we could double the number of youth players, I promise you everything else will improve. There will be more membership money coming into USAU. There will be more, like, growth begets growth. And we just simply haven't done enough to prioritize that. And now that we're coming out of COVID, it is the time to take advantage of that. All right, let's keep going. You got anything else, Keith, on this?
I mean, I feel like you and I could talk about this for literally the rest of the episode, the rest of the day. If we could do a 24-hour live stream.
Gets my blood
But
pressure up.
yeah, we can't stay with this because we've done this so many times. We could veer off into that area that we've charted many times.
Uh, Steph Rapazzo in the chat says investment in elite programs and visibility is an investment in the retention of youth with legitimate aspirations to stay in the sport to be able to, quote, make it. And I agree, right? As somebody who works in the media side of the sport, of course, I value, presenting the sport in like a professional way and having these big playing opportunities shown. But it's like there's literally multiple semi-pro leagues. There's the entire club division. There is a YCC tournament. There's a high school national championship tournament. Like, we have those opportunities existing already. The national teams are a part of that for sure. But it's still about, like, what is the thing that we care about the most? What's the number one A1 goal? I still feel like USAU's answer implicitly is like running elite championship series tournaments, which is still needed, and they do a really good job of that. But I think that number one goal needs to shift to increasing the number of people playing the sport, because I don't think they've done enough to support that through their actions and their allocation of money.